We're finally putting an end to your pathetic little company. My brother's voice echoed through the bankruptcy courtroom, polished and confident, the way it always sounded when he believed power was on his side. Vincent adjusted his tie as if this were a boardroom victory instead of a legal proceeding. Behind him, my parents sat in the gallery like a carefully rehearsed audience, my mother pressing a handkerchief to her eyes, my father staring straight ahead with rigid approval. I stood silently at the defense table, hands folded, listening as Vincent's attorney presented documents that were supposed to end everything I had built. The petition painted Apex Defense Systems as a failing operation drowning in debt, propped up by lies and unpaid family loans. I didn't interrupt. I didn't react. I was waiting. Because suddenly something shifted. Judge Margaret Holloway, a woman with 3 decades of courtroom authority behind her, paused mid-sentence. Her pen hovered over the papers. Her eyes narrowed as she read the company name again. Then she froze. "Counsel," she said sharply, motioning both lawyers to the bench. The courtroom went quiet. I watched as Vincent's confident smile faltered, just slightly. The judge leaned forward, lowering her voice, though I could still catch every word. "Is this the same Apex Defense Systems that secured the Department of Defense cybersecurity contract earlier this quarter?" she asked. "The one recently featured in the Wall Street Journal?" Vincent's lawyer stammered. Judge Holloway's gaze lifted and locked onto mine, curious, disbelieving, and increasingly irritated. "I'm going to need extensive clarification," she said, "because either this filing is astonishingly incompetent or someone is attempting to defraud this court." That was the first crack. 8 years earlier, Apex Defense Systems didn't exist. Neither did this version of me. I had founded the company in a garage with $3,000, a folding table, and more stubborn determination than common sense. The Moretti family did not do garages. We did prestige. My father, Antonio Moretti, owned a luxury car dealership empire. My brother Vincent was his heir apparent, groomed from birth to inherit it all. My younger sister Carla married into generational wealth and spent her days hosting charity luncheons and maintaining her social standing. And me? I was the middle child, the disappointment. I walked away from a Wharton business degree to work in cyber defense technology. When I told my father I wanted to build security systems for military communications, he laughed. "That's not a business," he said. "That's a job. Get something respectable. Work for a bank. You'll fail at this, Gabriella, and then you'll come crawling back." "I won't fail," I replied. "They all say that," he said calmly. "You will." That was the last time I asked for his approval. The early years nearly destroyed me. I lived on cheap noodles and caffeine, worked until my hands shook, and made mistakes that almost ended everything. Bad contracts, missed deadlines, a partnership that collapsed and took most of my savings with it. My family watched from a distance. "Still playing with computers?" Vincent would ask at holidays. "Still working on that little hobby?" my father added. "We just worry about you," my mother said, which really meant you embarrass us. By the 3rd year, I stopped attending family gatherings. Defending myself was exhausting, and I needed that energy to survive. And then slowly things changed. Apex developed proprietary cyber defense protocols capable of detecting and neutralizing intrusion attempts in milliseconds. In year 4, we landed our first government contract, then another. By year 7, Apex had 47 employees, $12 million in annual revenue, and a growing reputation in defense technology circles. 6 weeks earlier, everything accelerated. We secured a multi-year Department of Defense contract worth $89 million. It would elevate Apex from a promising startup to a major defense contractor. Industry publications took notice. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature. My family had no idea. I had kept my success deliberately quiet, operating under my married name, Gabriela Santos, for all public appearances. Anyone reading about G. Santos, CEO, never connected her to the daughter they'd written off years ago. I liked it that way. Then the bankruptcy petition arrived, filed by Vincent. It claimed Apex owed him $2 million from a personal investment made years earlier. It accused me of defaulting, alleged insolvency, and demanded court-ordered bankruptcy protection. Every word was false. Vincent had never invested a dollar in Apex. He had never shown interest beyond ridicule. The documents attached, loan agreements, contracts, financial statements, were complete fabrications. My attorney, Patricia Acuno, reviewed them and sighed. "This is blatant fraud," she said. "Any competent review will expose it quickly. But the filing alone could delay your DoD contract. That's the real danger." "He's trying to sabotage me," I said quietly. And he timed it carefully. The court date came quickly. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived early, calm and prepared. I wore a tailored suit, expensive but restrained. Authority without arrogance. Patricia joined me with 3 boxes of documentation: real financials, audits, contracts, and forensic analysis. Vincent arrived theatrically with our parents. He looked confident. My mother looked mournful. My father radiated judgment. They didn't acknowledge me. "Finally facing consequences," Vincent said loudly to his lawyer. Judge Holloway entered. The proceedings began. Vincent's attorney spoke confidently, portraying Apex as a reckless venture funded by family generosity and ruined by irresponsibility. Then the judge interrupted. She typed something into her computer, and everything stopped. She called counsel to the bench. Whispers turned tense. Vincent's lawyer went pale. My father leaned forward, suddenly alert. After several minutes, Judge Holloway addressed the room. "We will recess for 30 minutes, she said. "Both parties will prepare comprehensive documentation." Her eyes hardened as she looked at Vincent's attorney. "And I strongly advise you verify every document you've submitted, because if fraudulent filings have been made, the consequences will be severe." The gavel struck. Vincent's certainty evaporated. And during that recess, the truth was waiting. Quiet, documented, undeniable. The courtroom buzzed quietly as people stood, stretched, and whispered during the recess. Vincent immediately grabbed his lawyer by the arm, pulling him toward the corner with the desperation of a man who felt control slipping through his fingers. "What did she mean?" he hissed. "Why did she say that?" His lawyer didn't answer right away. He looked rattled, eyes darting, jaw tight. That silence said more than words ever could. At the defense table, Patricia and I worked calmly. She opened the first box and began laying out documents with methodical precision. Clean, organized, impossible to dispute. "These are the audited financial statements for the past 5 years, she said quietly. "Revenue growth, cash reserves, 0 outstanding personal loans." I nodded. "Add the forensic report first." Patricia placed a thin folder on top. Digital analysis of the petitioner's documents, creation dates, metadata, signature inconsistencies. Every one of Vincent's agreements was created 6 days ago. Across the room, my parents sat stiffly. My mother no longer dabbed her eyes. My father stared at the floor. The performance had ended, replaced by unease. 30 minutes later, Judge Holloway returned. She didn't sit immediately. Instead, she scanned the room as if measuring the weight of what was about to happen. "I've conducted preliminary research during the recess," she began. "Apex Defense Systems is not a distressed company. On the contrary, it appears to be one of the fastest-growing cyber defense contractors currently working with the federal government." A ripple moved through the gallery. She turned to Vincent's lawyer. "Would you care to explain why you initiated bankruptcy proceedings against a company showing no signs of insolvency?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client provided documentation indicating a significant outstanding debt." "Documentation," the judge repeated coolly, "that appears inconsistent with publicly available financial records." She turned toward me. "Ms. Santos, or Ms. Moretti, given the circumstances, would you like to respond?" I stood. "Your Honor, there is no debt," I said evenly. "My brother never invested in Apex Defense Systems. Every document he submitted is fabricated. This petition was filed to sabotage my company, not to recover money." "That is a serious allegation," the judge said. "And I have serious proof." Patricia stepped forward, distributing copies to the court and opposing counsel. "These are our verified financial statements," she said. "These are tax filings, audit reports, and redacted government contracts. And this," she added, tapping the forensic report, "demonstrates that the petitioner's documents were created less than a week ago." Vincent stood abruptly. "This is absurd. She's lying. I loaned her money. She's always been reckless." I met his gaze. "Then answer one question. What date was the loan issued?" He hesitated. "What account did the funds come from?" I continued. "Which bank? Which transfer?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "There was no loan," I said calmly, "only resentment." The courtroom went silent. Judge Holloway reviewed the materials carefully. Minutes stretched. Vincent's lawyer stared at the table, hands clasped tightly. My parents looked like strangers now. No confidence left, only realization. Finally, the judge removed her glasses. "The forensic evidence is conclusive," she said. "The documents submitted by the petitioner were recently created and falsely represented as historical agreements." Vincent's face drained of color. "I am dismissing this bankruptcy petition immediately," Judge Holloway continued. "However, this matter does not end here." She fixed Vincent with an unwavering stare. "Filing fraudulent documents in federal court constitutes a serious crime. This case will be referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation of potential fraud and perjury." Vincent shook his head. "Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding." "There has not," she said sharply. "You attempted to force a solvent company into bankruptcy using forged evidence." She turned toward me. "Mrs. Santos, I apologize for the disruption to your business. The record will reflect the fraudulent nature of this filing." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. The gavel struck. Case dismissed. The aftermath was chaos. Court officers approached Vincent and his lawyer immediately. Voices rose, papers scattered. My parents stood frozen, unsure whether to leave or intervene. As I gathered my documents, my father moved toward the exit. I caught his eye. "Mr. and Mrs. Moretti," I said evenly. They stopped. "You knew about this." My father turned slowly. "This was Vincent's doing." "You sat there while he tried to destroy my company," I replied. "You nodded along." "We thought the business was failing," my mother said weakly. "Vincent told us." "You believed him because it was convenient," I said. "Believing I'd failed was easier than admitting you were wrong." I closed the final box. The contract is real. The employees are real. The technology protecting military systems is real. You tried to erase all of it because my success didn't fit your narrative. My father said nothing. "Whatever happens to Vincent now is his responsibility," I continued. "And whatever excuses you tell yourselves, that's yours. But don't contact me again." I walked out without waiting for a response. The investigation moved fast. Vincent's lawyer, facing consequences of his own, cooperated fully. He admitted Vincent had approached him with the plan, insisting Apex was an embarrassment that needed to be shut down quietly. Charges followed within weeks: bankruptcy fraud, perjury, attempted interference with a government contractor. Vincent pleaded guilty. My father used his influence and money to negotiate a reduced sentence. Vincent avoided maximum prison time but emerged with a felony conviction, a stripped reputation, and no future in the family business. The dealership survived, barely. My father stepped away from leadership, no longer trusted by the elite clients he once courted. 6 months later, my mother sent a letter. It spoke of misunderstandings, of family, of forgiveness. I didn't reply, because some bridges don't burn. They collapse under the weight of truth. Apex Defense Systems turned 10 last month. The anniversary wasn't marked by speeches or celebrations. No champagne. No glossy press event. Just a quiet moment in the conference room, watching engineers and analysts move between glass walls, solving problems that actually mattered. We had grown to 156 employees. Our contracts with the Department of Defense had expanded to more than $300 million over the next 5 years. We opened a second facility in Colorado, with plans already approved for a third in Texas. We were no longer surviving. We were building. The Wall Street Journal ran a follow-up article titled "The Defense Startup That Survived a Family Sabotage Attempt." I agreed to one interview, carefully controlled, focused on legal lessons rather than personal betrayal. The reporter asked, "Why do you think your brother did it?" I paused before answering. "Some people would rather destroy proof than admit they were wrong," I said. "Success can feel like an accusation to those who bet against you." "And your family?" the reporter asked. "Do you still have a relationship?" "I have a relationship with the family I chose," I said. "That's enough." The article ended there. Vincent began serving his sentence shortly afterward. Minimum security, 3 years. A felony record that would follow him for life. The man once groomed to inherit everything now had nothing to inherit. I didn't attend his sentencing. My father stepped away from daily operations at the dealership. The brand survived, but his influence did not. High-end clients distanced themselves quietly. Reputation, once cracked, never fully seals. I heard these updates through third parties. I didn't seek them out. 6 months after the case ended, a letter arrived from my sister Carla. She had always been a spectator in the family, never cruel, never kind, just absent. Her letter was long, carefully written, and full of explanations. She wrote about how the scandal had affected her standing, how people whispered, how she felt unfairly judged for something she hadn't personally done. "I never agreed with how they treated you," she wrote. "I just didn't know how to speak up." It was an apology padded with self-interest. I replied with one sentence: "Silence in the face of cruelty isn't neutrality. It's participation. But thank you for writing." I meant it. Forgiveness isn't a requirement for growth. Acknowledgement is enough. 3 months ago, my daughter was born. Her name is Elena. I named her after my grandmother, the only Moretti who ever believed in me. The woman who sat beside me in that garage once, holding a cup of bad coffee, telling me I was building something important even when no one else could see it. She died before Apex became what it is now, but she told me on her deathbed that she knew I'd succeed. I wish she were here to see this. I hold Elena in the nursery of the home I bought with money I earned, in a neighborhood I chose far from the shadows of the past. I tell her stories even though she's too young to understand. About resilience, about courage, about the difference between people who lift you up and those who need you to fail. "Your grandparents won't be part of your life," I told her softly one night as she stared at me with unfocused newborn eyes. "That's not punishment. It's protection." She deserves better than conditional love. She deserves belief. I watched her sleep, this tiny human who would never know the family that rejected her mother, but would know the family that stood beside her mother when she had nothing but an idea and a locked garage door. That is more than enough. They forced me into bankruptcy court expecting to finally prove I was the failure they'd always claimed. Instead, they exposed themselves. Not just as liars, but as people who mistook blood for loyalty and control for love. Judge Holloway recognized my company's name because we had built something real, something valuable, something that couldn't be erased by forged papers or bitterness disguised as concern. The courtroom wasn't where I won. I had already won years earlier. Every night I chose persistence over approval. Every time I kept going without applause. Every moment I refused to shrink so others could feel comfortable. Apex Defense Systems exists because I believed in it when no one else would. And Elena will grow up knowing that belief isn't something you beg for. It's something you build. Slowly, relentlessly, brick by brick.